Alright guys, so in today's video we are going to be working on yet another Jeep, this guy right here. So what we're going to be doing on this one today is something that's a little bit different than usual, and I thought I'd bring it to you guys because I like to bring you guys the unusual ones, and that's why I haven't really filmed too many of them lately because they've all been pretty much the same. But we'll go through this one real quick and I'll show you what's going on, and we'll go from there. So it's going to be all about reference points in this one, so stay tuned.
Don't worry about that little guy.
Alright, so normally on these Jeeps we have reference points that we use, and those reference points will determine where the repair panels actually sit. And what you want to make sure that you do with these things is you line up these repair panels correctly, because the front and rear control arms are mounted to these repair pieces. And if you get it wrong, you're going to have a very, very difficult time lining the vehicle back up, or even getting in alignment, or the vehicle will track sideways down the road. It'll do all sorts of weird stuff. And with it doing sorts of weird stuff like that, it becomes unsafe and dangerous. Well, the Jeep that we have behind us now, this beautiful looking Jeep, has a horrible frame. And all of our normal reference points are missing. So we're going to have to figure out a way to reference the repairs on this frame without having our normal repair references. So let's go over the frame and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so on these frames, the normal reference point is the rear lower control arm bolt and the front lower control arm bolt. And we got to get you guys some light in here. Hold on one second, I'll grab a light. And the front lower control arm bolt. But as you can see on this Jeep, our lower control arm is broken off the frame. So we lose that reference point. So we can no longer measure from that bolt to the rear bolt right here to get our center section aligned properly. So we have to come up with a new reference point. And then on top of that, we're also going to not only need to reference the center section here, but we're also going to need to reference the new front section that we're putting in as well. So we need to come up with some sort of way to get this frame squared up so that we can reference all of these repair panels off of it and go from there. So let's go take a look at some documentation that comes along with the safety caps, and I'll tell you guys how we're going to do this. Okay, so here is our normal reference point right there. 57 inches between those two, the rear and the front. Now, because our fronts are compromised and our rears are compromised, then we've got a problem. We no longer have a reference point. So now what are we going to do? We got to come up with a different reference point. And sometimes we use the center body mounts, but those can be off a little bit on every one of these frames. And I've seen that happen where they are slightly off within, a quarter of an inch or so. Now, this measurement here says 57 inches plus or minus a half an inch. And as long as both sides are exactly the same, then you're good. However, like I said, we don't have our front reference point, nor do we have our rear reference point. So, luckily for us, in the ART 131 and 131-4 installation, from Safety Cap, we have another reference point. We can measure from the rear crossmember to the center of the rear lower control arm bolt. 43.5 inches. And so once we set 43.5 inches from this distance on our new piece, which I'll show you guys in a second, then we can run our 57-inch measurement and set our front piece, and then we can just match all these measurements on both sides, and we'll be perfectly okay. All right, so our point of reference is going to start from this rear cross member, and I can't point to it because my hands are full, but it's going to start from this rear cross member right here, the back face of this. And we're going to go 43.5 inches to right about where this lower control arm is. And that'll be our whole center section that we're going to put into place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that center section up in there and in place, and then we'll start to take the measurements, and I'll show you guys exactly how we're going to do that. Okay, so now we have the new piece in place. And you can see, because of how it is, it's there. So now all we have to do is we have our new lower control arm mount right there. We have to measure from the center of that bolt hole all the way back to that guy right there, the back of that cross member. And as long as we have 43.5 inches, we're good to go. So let's give that a quick measure and see how we stacked out. Alrighty, let's give this sucker a quick measure. I'm going to go from the center of this bolt hole to the back of the cross member. And we are dead on 43.5 inches. So perfect measurement, we're 43.5 inches. Alright, so perfect measurement, right at 43.5 inches. Now we have our reference point that we can now weld this piece in, knowing full well that that mount right there is exactly where it's supposed to be. So now all we're going to have to do is when we do the front mount, we're going to have to measure from the center of that bolt hole to the center of the front one, make sure we have 57 inches. So we're doing good so far. But that's how you measure that reference point when you've lost all the other reference points for this particular piece. It's super easy. It's right in all the safety cap manual stuff. So we're going to go ahead and buzz this one in. Once we get this one welded in, then we'll go ahead and we'll knock out the front piece, and I'll show you guys how we do that. Okay, so we've got the front piece set in place. Everything looks so damn zoomed. Alright, so we got the front piece set in place. And now we need to make our measurement from the center of that bolt to the center of that bolt. You see, because I'm only one person, I gotta be clever, per se. So let me throw you on the tripod. We'll take this measurement. Remember that we are actually looking for focus 57 inches minus plus or minus a half an inch, but we like to try to get things dead on. So let's go ahead and see where we're at here. Let's do it all in one take, see if we got close. Oop. Or maybe not, because I can't get over the top of that. Okay, let's see how close we are. Woofda. So, there's your 57-inch mark. And with the tape measure where it's at, I'd say we're pretty dead on. 57 inches front to back. We got everything good, so now we can go ahead and burn this piece in. Once that piece is burned in, then this whole side is done. And then we can just rinse and repeat. Alright, so we finished burning in the entire thing. You can see it right behind me here. It is completely welded in. Now, I can't stress to you enough how much you need reference points when you're doing this job. In most cases, those front control arm mounts are going to be right where they're supposed to be, and you won't have an issue lining up the center sections because you'll be able to measure the 57 inches off of the front lower control arms. However, in this case, they were both broken off the frame. As well were the rear mounts. The rear mounts were not in the spot they're supposed to be in either. So, without any actual physical reference in space as to where those pieces need to be, there's a very good possibility that you could put them in the wrong spot. And not only that you could put them in the wrong spot, but you could put them in the wrong spot side to side, and what ends up happening is your axle right here will be sideways. And if it's sideways, what's going to happen is as the vehicle's going down the road, it's going to be crab walking, the alignment's not going to be right, things are going to be all sorts of messed up. So you have to have a concrete, solid point of reference. And on this Jeep, it was literally all the way in the very back. So our point of reference ended up being right here. Now, that's the only spot on this Jeep that wasn't affected by the frame breakage. So utilizing that, we measured 43.5 inches to the center of this bolt, which gave us the factory location of this mount. Once we got this piece burned in, then we could measure from the center of that bolt hole to the center of the front lower, 57 inches, and 57 inches dead on the money. So now we know that all of our frame rail is in factory location. And again, there's actually a couple more reasons why that's important as well. And it's not just the placement of the axles, which obviously this isn't even in the right spot. It should be here. So again, we got issues already with that axle. But once we put the control arms back in, we'll be fine. Because the other control arm is broken clean off the frame too. But now, the reason all of this matters so much is simply because, one, you need to have your axles in the right spot, and two, these 3 bolts right here, 1, 2, and 3, those are for the center skid plate. That's the skid plate that holds the transmission and transfer case in place. If these are off, none of that's going to line up either. You're not going to be able to line up your transmission mount. You won't line up the other 3 bolts on the other side because everything will be so far out of whack. So having that one point of reference all the way in the back is going to give us that mount location, the front mount location, and we'll be good to go. But guys, look at this Jeep. This thing is actually like really, really nice. The body is perfect. All the body work has been done. The hardtop was actually sanded and base cleared so that you can't see the texture in the top anymore, which is super cool. But the frame, completely toast. And I don't know if I took a walk around with you guys on this one, but this side is much better than the driver's side was. This whole thing stemmed because somebody welded these damn side step mounts to the frame. Not only did they weld them to the frame, but they welded them to the lower control arm mounts, which in turn held water, rotted the lower control arm mounts, and nothing is where it's supposed to be. This mount was broken off at one point and is welded back in the incorrect location. And then when we get to the front, that's what we're dealing with. Absolutely zero light. We get to the front, and that's what we're dealing with. That absolutely lovely, broken, everything destroyed, and then repaired with what I can only assume is sheet metal. So somebody tried. They tried. Not real hard, but they tried. Didn't work out. Same thing here. More sheet metal. Galvanized at that, which is amazing. So, again, once we've got the point of reference, we can put all this stuff back into factory location, make this thing track the way that it's supposed to track, get all the suspension and the alignment back in line, and everything will be wonderful. But the rest of this thing is actually pretty good. So, okay, so you may think I'm giving away some secrets here, and you know what, truthfully, I am. And the reason I'm doing that is because, let's say it again, I know you guys are going to get tired of it, but if you don't have that point of reference to start from, the job's going to come out all messed up. And it's going to end up here, and I'm going to end up screaming and yelling at whoever tried to fix it and did it wrong, and then it's going to go on YouTube, and everybody's going to be embarrassed. Or, worse yet, someone's going to get hurt. So, I do this because if you guys are in your driveway and you're trying to knock this out yourself, or you're with a buddy and you guys got a lift and you're trying to knock it out yourself, if you can weld a little bit, this is a job that anybody can do. So I'm trying to give you guys enough information to where if you decide to do this yourself, you do it right, because doing it wrong is going to cause so many problems, and ultimately the issue of safety comes up. When we do these things here, we make sure that every single solitary step is taken into account and done properly, done right, and that everything is exactly where it needs to be so that when this Jeep leaves here, it'll provide another 10 years of service. I don't want this thing coming back in 6 months. I don't want it coming back in 6 years. I want it to be good for the next however long this person owns this vehicle. And also, too, if it gets in an accident, it needs to be structurally strong. You can't have this thing coming apart if it gets into a crash, because again, there's a safety issue. So if you guys are attempting this and you're doing this, just remember that all the information is in all of the safety cap pamphlets. So if I can show you, this is the one that we were looking at. That one is for the center sections, like you can see there. Then we have the sheet for the front sections that we just did. And again, it goes through placement and everything else that you need to know is in that instructions, guys. Read the instructions. And then this is for those rear spring buckets that you always see us doing. And again, there is a specific measurement and a point of reference. Again, from the back. This time it's the center of the body mount bolt to the rear of the spring bucket. There's your measurement. So, that being said, make sure you have your reference points. If you don't, I'm going to come and get you. If you do, everything's going to turn out fine. You're going to have a Jeep that's going to last you for a long, long time, and everything's going to be great. So, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a little bit more in depth on how we kind of set things up and get things in place. Threw a little time lapse in there, me welding for you, sacrificed yet another GoPro just for you guys. So, hope you enjoyed that one. Stay tuned for the next one. Maybe we'll do, I have the center body mounts are rotted on this one, so we have the safety cap torque box repairs that will repair that center body mount. So maybe we'll do those next. I don't know yet. And I keep telling you guys I'm going to introduce you to Matt. Well, eventually we're going to have to introduce you to Matt. Just so happens that he's not here every time I film a video. So we'll do that too. All right, guys. We'll see you next Sunday with another video. Not sure what it's going to be about yet, but you guys can be just as surprised as I am. So have a good night, everyone.